expressed during the related show are those of the show personalities and guest alone, and not those of Vic Canellis Media Group, its parent, affiliates, or stations. VCMG Live is not responsible for any content, information, or opinions expressed. User bears full responsibility for their reliance on such content, information, or opinions.
Ant2.tv presents You and Your Doctor, teaching you to live a longer and healthier life. Proudly sponsored by All County Healthcare, where people are the heart of our business. All County Healthcare is a Medicare certified agency where one call will service all your home care health needs. For more information, call 954-717-7027 or visit our website, allcountyhealthcare.com. Now, let's get informed to living a longer and healthier life. Here is your host for today's show.
Welcome back to another episode of You and Your Doctor, sponsored by All County Healthcare. We are a certified home healthcare agency servicing Palm Beach County, Broward, and Miami-Dade. You can reach us directly at 954-717-7027. I am your host, Louise Gomez. Welcome to the show. And today we have Dr. David Moskowitz. He is a preventative nephrologist right here in Hollywood, Florida. Phone number is 305-705-9922. And you can reach him at D as in David, W as in William, Moskowitz, Moskowitz, at genomed.com, genomed.com. Thank you so much, Dr. Moskowitz. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule and coming on the show. We appreciate that.
Well, Louise, I really am happy to be on your show.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Moskowitz, can you tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about your training, your education, and a little bit about your background before we get into the day-to-day of what you do?
Sure. So I went to good schools, Harvard College. I got a Marshall Scholarship to go to Oxford and did biochemistry. I came back to Harvard, MIT, and then I went to Barnes Hospital for internal medicine residency and a renal fellowship. I taught for 11 years at St. Louis U. And then while I was at the VA in St. Louis, I worked out protocols for preventing acute and chronic kidney failure. So I can prevent dialysis probably 90% of the time. And to my surprise, that was the end of my career. I got essentially fired from academics and sort of kept out of academics ever since. But meanwhile, I've collected about 4,000 patients so far. I published my first 1,000 20 years ago, and I've gotten another 3,000 since. My protocol has worked for diabetic and hypertensive kidney failure, which is 90% of why people go on dialysis. It's worked in every patient population I've tried it in, including Haitians here in Miami, in North Miami, who have the roughest, the most severe hypertension and diabetes that I've seen of anybody. And the only group I haven't tried it in are Pacific Islanders, who I'm told have normal blood pressure and may not be able to tolerate the kind of high doses of quinapril, an ACE inhibitor, that I use.
Yeah, my ears perked up when you just said that you were able to reduce kidney failure in what percentage of the patients? Did you say 90?
Yeah, diabetes and hypertension cause 90% of chronic kidney disease.
Wow.
Polycystic kidney disease is another 5%. And then all the others, focal segmental, IgA, C3 glomerular nephropathy, membranoproliferative membranous, all these other lupus, all these other things that you have to worry about to pass renal boards is only 5%.
Was it a protocol that was already being used and you tweaked it, or can you share a little bit more about that protocol? What did you do to have such a high rate?
Well, so by the time I got on the bandwagon, ACE inhibitors had been used already for 10 years. So the first ACE inhibitor was captopril in 1978, and I was still in medical school then. 10 years later, in 88, I was a brand new attending at St. Louis University and at the St. Louis VA, where I was staff nephrologist. And it took me about 7 years to figure out how to prevent the high potassium that comes with end-stage kidney disease, and that's made worse when you add an ACE inhibitor.
Can you please tell us what an ACE inhibitor is for us layman's, in layman's terms? Can you please tell us what is an ACE inhibitor?
So 60 million Americans have high blood pressure.
Right.
Probably 50% over the age of 50 and 80% over the age of 80. So it's an age-dependent disease, very common. And one of the many ways of treating high blood pressure is with an ACE inhibitor. ACE stands for angiotensin converting enzyme. And what it does is it converts something that's made out of 10 amino acids, which is the building block of proteins. And it clips off the final 2 amino acids pretty much like a pencil sharpener. And angiotensin 1, that has 10 amino acids, is inert. It doesn't really do anything. But angiotensin 2, which has the 8 amino acids, is extremely powerful. It causes blood vessels to constrict. It causes sodium retention and water retention. It basically causes high blood pressure. So if you inhibit the production of that 8 amino acid peptide, the octapeptide, then you can actually prevent high blood pressure in the first place. And what I found was that a very high dose of a particular ACE inhibitor, and there are over a dozen being made. They're all generic at this point. Captopril was the first, but the one that ultimately worked is called quinapril. And the other thing that mattered was the dose. So when I started giving people ACE inhibitors in 94, nobody had really been using a high dose, and nobody's using a high dose now either. And so I figured either people are using the wrong dose or the wrong ACE inhibitor. So I tried out some of the new ones at the time, and they didn't work. And then I fell back on the one that was already available at the St. Louis VA, which happened to be quinapril. And I started going up on the dose. And lo and behold, the first patient that I went way up on the dose with dropped his creatinine, actually improved his kidney function, which I'd been told as a fellow could never happen.
That's impressive. So I would imagine that would be something that everybody would want to jump on that bandwagon, right? One would think that would be a new protocol, so to speak.
One would think that, and
Right.
that's what I was led to believe by my lectures in medical school. They sat us down the first week of medical school amid these, life-size portraits of giants like Soma Weiss at the Brigham in the auditorium, and they expected us to solve diseases just like Soma Weiss did. And so I thought my future was golden. Unfortunately, dialysis is a $200 billion a year industry, which I call medical slavery, because what happened was everybody I approached in healthcare, in the government, in nonprofits like the National Kidney Foundation, the American Society of Nephrology, even the American Diabetes Association that gave me grant money, the Missouri Kidney Program that gave me grant money for my lab.
Okay.
Everybody I approached wanted to preserve dialysis. They were too busy to help me
Mm,
publicize my protocol. And because it was just me announcing my protocol, no
right.
matter how many hundreds or thousands of patients I had treated, I was dismissed. And in fact, I went to the head of Blue Cross Blue Shield, Anthem, who was a guy I knew down the hall at Mass General, who was in another research lab next to where I was working as a medical student. He was now the head of Anthem. And when I told him I'd published 1,000 patients, he said, "Come back when you have 100,000." But of course, you can't have 100,000
Right.
patients in a single lifetime. You need a health plan to work with you, to
Sure.
collaborate. And so he never did, and he never had to adopt my protocol, and so dialysis goes on.
Yeah. So, we're lucky to have you here in South Florida because, with the demographic and the different ages that we have, older, seniors, we're really lucky to have you to be able to help the seniors or whoever has this type of challenge to really implement your protocol. And I always say there's options, right? We have options. When we look for options, we find them. So I want people to know about you because I think it's imperative. I'm going to give you a number again. If you know anybody who's having a challenge with these types of challenges, please call Dr. Moskowitz, 305-705-9922. So maybe you want to share a little bit more about, I think you have a podcast, is that right? Maybe you wanted to share a little bit about that?
Right. Well, Marcel Reed, who is a wonderful woman and was involved with ACORN, she's a whistleblower and has encouraged whistleblowers for decades, got me to come to Washington, D.C., and has been helping me just as you all have. And she gave me a podcast the third Thursday of every month, and which I've entitled "Abolishing Medical Slavery." And what I what I think is that medicine and healthcare and research is not moving nearly fast enough to get rid of these awful diseases that we baby boomers are now suffering and dying from, along the lines of dialysis. There are plenty of people. Look at Tina Turner, who just died. She didn't have to
Right.
go on dialysis. I published my paper of 1,000 patients back in 2002, but because it never got any publicity whatsoever, and because there are tens of thousands of science journals, and nobody reads them all, and it takes a media, it takes the newspapers to actually publicize information that's inside those journals. And the media is really bad because they only read they read three journals. They read the
Right.
New England Journal of Medicine, they read Lancet, and then they read two or three that have nothing to do with medicine, like Science and Nature. And so if your paper's not in two out of the 70,000,
Right.
then nobody's ever going to pick it up. And you might as well be like Gregor Mendel, the Bohemian monk, who the abbot of in Czechoslovakia, who invented genetics in the 1840s, and it wasn't rediscovered until 1902, 1905, by some Englishmen who stumbled across his paper. So even though we live in an information age,
Right.
it's still just as bad. I mean, there
Yeah.
are over 20 million people who have died globally because the media never publicized my 2002 paper.
It takes a movement of, it just takes a couple of good people that are, listening and wanting to get this information to go out, to go viral. We're going to have a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll see what else we can learn about you. We'll be right back, Dr. Moskowitz.
My pleasure.
All County Healthcare has exciting news for any and all patients with COPD or other respiratory ailments. Listen to what renowned pulmonologist Dr. Keith Robinson has to say.
Hello, I'm Dr. Keith Robinson, board-certified pulmonologist, medical director at Fusion Health Pulmonary Rehabilitation, and a board member with the American Lung Association of South Florida. We have exciting news for patients with COPD. We now offer IPV therapy at home, which has been demonstrated to improve airway clearance, decrease hospitalization, and improve quality of life of patients with COPD. Please call All County Healthcare for more information about this FDA-approved therapy.
For further information, call All County Healthcare now at 954-717-7027. That is 954-717-7027, or visit our website at allcountyhealthcare.com. You can also find us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Remember, All County Healthcare always puts the patient's needs first. You are listening to You and Your Doctor, Living Longer and Healthier, an informative show that helps you find answers to questions you always wanted to ask, but did not have that somebody that could make a difference in your life. Call into the show if you have a question at 888-565-1470, and we will put you on the air to inform all our listeners. Now, back to our show.
And we're back. We have Dr. David W. Moskowitz, a preventative nephrologist right here in Hollywood, Florida. You can reach him directly at 305-705-9922. The website is Genomed, GENOMED.com, and that is the email address is dwmoskowitz@genomed.com. So, we're, like I said, we're really lucky to have you in our backyard because I always believe in preventative care. Is there anything when you talk to your patients about diet, exercise, lifestyle? What do you talk to them about? What else is part of that protocol?
Well, the beauty of my protocol is that you don't have to change your lifestyle.
Wow.
So I developed it at the VA about the only thing that veterans have going for them. You have to be poor. You can't make more than 21 grand. Maybe it's a little bit more now, but 30 years ago it was 21 grand. So I didn't ask people to change their lifestyle because that was basically the only thing they had going for them. All you have to do is give people a high enough dose of quinapril and a second drug to control their potassium. And those two drugs do their magic. You don't have to worry.
Huh. That is amazing. So I know you see a lot of patients, and I think you might have had some experience with us, with All County Healthcare. Can you tell us a little bit about your patients or experiences with us, or any good feedback, or anything you can tell us about the...
I'd like to say that All County Healthcare has made me a billionaire, that I'm currently taking care of, 1 billion adults globally. but it hasn't happened yet. In fact, I don't think I've gotten a single patient from All County Healthcare.
We thought you maybe had some experience with our providers, any type of physical therapist, or any of your patients had any type of interaction with them. Maybe not.
No. I've just been on the show, but I I haven't had any professionally or financially rewarding relationships yet. But
Yeah.
hope springs eternal. What I can tell you is somehow a patient found me on Google. So
Okay.
this is a woman who is happy to have her name released, a woman named Alice Lowe from San Antonio. And in March or so, February, March of 2018, she was told that she had to start dialysis. And
Okay.
she contacted me, and at that point, I thought she was way too far advanced for me to do anything for her, because I didn't have any experience with advanced kidney failure at that point.
Okay.
And finally, she's a very persistent woman, and by June, she convinced me to give it a try, even though I had told her, 4 months earlier that it was hopeless. So I worked with her in June of 2018 and got her on high dose quinapril.
Mm-hmm.
And she did extremely well. In fact, she hasn't had to go on dialysis since. So it's over 5.5 years.
Wow.
Unfortunately, my stuff never got publicized. And in the process of making quinapril, there's this contamination that comes up that's a common contamination anytime drugs are made, called nitrosoquinapril, a nitrosamine. And the FDA is very strict about nitrosamines because they're worried that they may cause cancer. And nitrosamines are mutagenic in bacteria, meaning that they change the DNA sequence in
Mm-hmm.
Salmonella and a few other strains of bacteria, a test that was developed by Bruce Ames in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And so anything that fails the Ames test, the FDA regulates very tightly. And even though more nitrosamines are produced when you grill hamburger meat or a hot dog than you'll ever consume in a pill. So about a year ago, the FDA found nitrosamine contamination in 2 companies out of the 4 that made quinapril,
Mm-hmm.
my magic drug,
Yeah.
and shut down production in
Oh
the 2
no.
companies. And the other 2 and because nobody knew that it was special, that only quinapril could prevent renal failure. Another casualty of the lack of media attention.
Mm.
Besides the 20 million deaths, now nobody can get quinapril. So of the 4 companies, nobody makes quinapril anymore, and all sources have run out. And Alice Lowe's own cache of quinapril, and I sent her my own supply, ran out in
Oh.
mid-September.
Oh
And
no.
I started her on a second ACE inhibitor called Moexapril, which is very similar in
Okay.
structure. And initially for a week, she did well. And then after the second week, she started to crap out, basically.
Mm.
And her kidney function has declined steadily ever since. And now I'm racing to get her an emergency supply of quinapril by this weekend, or else she's going to have to go on dialysis. The problem with going on dialysis is that you're dead in a year or 2. It's not well appreciated that the life expectancy on dialysis is in single digits, usually 2 to 3 years at most. And in people around 80, and Alice Lowe's 78, only a year or so. And she's been off the machine now for over 5.5 years. And if she were to go on the machine, which without quinapril she would need by Christmas, I could almost guarantee that she'd be dead by next Christmas. So it's really a life or death situation to try to get her back on quinapril soon.
So is there any other generic drug that would have the same molecular constituent? No, they don't. That's
No,
interesting.
and quinapril's generic, and I've been looking at other ACE inhibitors now for 30 years. patients come in on
Right.
another ACE inhibitor, their kidneys are getting worse. I switch them to quinapril, they get better. So, there are a dozen at least ACE inhibitors, and none of them work except for quinapril.
Wow, that's interesting how they stopped that production, huh? Wow. So it, it you kind of thought you weren't able to help her, and she convinced you. So now that leads me to believe that there's a bigger, broader spectrum of people that you can help, right? Because originally you thought it would only be for certain type of
I,
patient,
I thought it only early stage
right? Early stage.
that I could help, and now I realize it can help late stage. And so, you're talking about South Florida and nursing homes and how many people are
Wow.
going on dialysis. You're absolutely right. The biggest group of people going on dialysis are the elderly.
Right.
And that's been true for at least 30 years, that they're the fastest growing group on dialysis, and they live a matter of months. A year is a big deal for a 90-year-old going on dialysis. Usually it's a few months. And what's happening is nursing homes and places like John Knox Village are establishing dialysis units within them for convenience, and they advertise that as a plus for their
Right.
nursing home, when in
Yeah.
fact they should be preventing dialysis, which would be far easier and far better for their residents.
So have you been able to see if now that you're not using quinapril, if the other ACE inhibitors are just as effective, or have you been
No,
able
there's
to?
nothing that works. Nothing works. And so
No.
now I'm in the situation, if I can't, I'm getting quinapril for Alice Low. I don't have any other patients who are as seriously ill as her. But if anybody calls me up, I'm going to have to get one of the 4 companies to start making quinapril fast if I'm going to be able to help them.
Yeah.
So in a way, I hope nobody calls me until quinapril becomes available again.
When do you think that might be? Do you think
Well,
2024?
the 4 companies are Aurobindo, Lupin, Solco Healthcare, and Pfizer generics.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is, they don't even reply. I contact them on LinkedIn, and they don't even bother replying. Teva, I think, used to make quinapril, but they say we don't make it anymore. And they're not in. I mean, this is a huge business opportunity.
That's what I'm
We're talking
saying.
about, yeah, 800 million adults with high blood pressure. It should be the drug of first choice, quinapril, to prevent kidney failure and diabetes down the road. We're talking about 5 cents a pill, maybe 4 pills a day, 365 days a year, 800 million. I mean, we're talking about a $5 billion a year industry for a generic drug, which is unheard of.
I know. I mean, it makes sense to me. So, Dr. Moskowitz, we have 2 minutes left. We're going to wrap it up. But before we leave, is there a message you want to share with the audience, or anything that you can leave us with? Any words of wisdom?
Well, I would encourage people to listen to my podcast the 3rd Thursday of December, which I hope will not be on Christmas Eve.
Okay.
And I think we're in a healthcare revolution right now.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think we're
I'm
getting
sorry,
very
I
poor
didn't
public
realize
health.
that we gotta go. We're actually running late, but thank you so much for your time. I want to continue the conversation. Thank you so much. Please reach Dr.
Thanks, Louise.
Moskowitz, 305-705-9922. Thank you so much for your time.
For letting us share with you a longer and healthier lifestyle. If you have a doctor or are a doctor and wish to be on the show, call AMP2 TV at 866-244-5422, and we will put you on the air as soon as possible. Tune in next week for more information on